Welcome to Search for Signs. My name is Gary Willing. If this information interests you, please press the like and subscribe button and press the bell for notifications.
Well, I hope you're doing well today. It is the 21st of May. And if you have any questions or comments that are worth talking about, I do recommend posting those questions in the most recent video. Or you could also email me directly at searchforsigns@mail.com. Now, if you're one of those folks that gets through my dad humor, did I say bad or dad? Yes, I did. And, all the stuff that I talk about, and actually take the time to listen to Benjamin Creme's master's message that I usually read at the end of these videos. And it's something that you want to read for yourself because you find them enlightening. I do recommend searching for Benjamin Creme books on Amazon. And they're a compilation of Benjamin Creme's master's articles on all sorts of topics, but they were published in Share International magazine over the years, and they compile them and make a book out of it. And you can also, if you're really interested in some of this stuff and want to take it to the next level, definitely recommend buying one of Benjamin Creme's books, maybe Maitreya's Mission Volume 2 or 3, and then circling back and picking up one if that's something you want to do or whatever. It's mainly a compilation of things that he talked about in Share International, question and answer, those kind of things. Talks about the rays, if that's something that you're interested in great depth. So, and as always, I don't make any money off of it, and I'm not the spokesperson for Share International. I'm just throwing it out there as a suggestion to you if it's something that interests you. Okay? So, let's get on into it. Anyway, I hope the Maitreya star will appear in the skies soon. It actually already did, and the star of Maitreya were 4 huge spaceships, about the size, Benjamin Creme said, about the size of 5 football fields. Pretty big. Or he was from Europe, so he called them football pitches. So they were, I think, bigger than a regular American football field. But anyway, pretty massive ships, nonetheless. But those were the star, in quotation marks, of Maitreya. Now, whether they were here to herald his first interview, which has already come and gone, so whether they're still out in the sky, they were out there for a few years, I know. They're still out there, I don't know. I know UFOs are still out there, so, whether it's those ships per se or not, I mean, who knows? We'll have to ask Maitreya when he's out and about, known for who he is. But anyway, all right, the next question comes from Jerry Wells. What are your thoughts about soul life after? What happens after we pass away? I would recommend, first of all, if this is, what you want to know, I would recommend reading what Benjamin Creme talks about it, because people asked him in his books, and he goes in great depth talking about what happens after we die. The other thing is, if you want to take it to a whole other level, definitely get your hands on the book Death, the Great Adventure by Alice Bailey. Now, since you're asking me my personal thoughts on it, I think that I don't believe in a heaven and a hell, first of all. I don't think that just because you don't believe in what the church says that you're going to go to hell for an eternity. And I don't think just because you believe in what the church says you're going to live in paradise for eternity either. And to quote Alice Bailey, both are equally undesirable situations. I mean, who wants to, I don't know. I can't put my mind around either of those two concepts, but I do think that when we die, because most of us are focused on the astral or the emotional part of our nature, that we go to one or other of the astral planes. And that's where the idea that these religious groups have about paradise after death, and where you see your long-lost relatives and so forth and live a much better life and so forth like that in paradise, comes from. And then you live there for a certain amount of time, and then your number's up, and you got to come back into incarnation and do it all over again, and yada, 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 yada. Now, Benjamin Creme said that when you die, you do see that light at the end of the tunnel, and that's your soul. So he always said to just forget about the astral planes, just go right to your soul. And you can live at one with your soul for a while. And he said that's where it's at. So he said, forget about the relatives. Don't worry about the relatives. And the astral planes, as wonderful and as appealing, and the draw that, and the magnetic appeal that can happen when you die. He said the best thing to do is just to just to go toward the light. And now, as we start to evolve, we will live in Praelaya, excuse me, which is where you are at one with your soul for a time, And he says there it's like a very profound, like having the most profound meditation, and where you're at one with your soul and stuff. He said, and at peace and the bliss that comes from that. That's what it's like to the nth degree, Now, once these masters start to come out known for who they are, right? I mean, Maitreya's on TV, but he's not known for being anything other than just a person on TV. But once they're known for who they are and they're direct, and guiding us and teaching us in the ways that only these masters can teach humanity, of course, they will talk at great length about what happens after we die. Because one of Maitreya's main jobs is to dispel the fear and the guilt that humanity has. And fear of death and disease is massive. It's huge, right? And these masters will show us and they'll teach us how and what happens after we're dead. And we'll also see these masters for who they are. We'll see the master who was the Madonna. We'll see the master who was Paul, the master who was John, or the master who was Jesus. And they will prove to us, and then there'll be examples of reincarnation. And I'm sure more and more of us will start to remember our last lives and our past lives and so forth. And it'll be easier for us, the notion of death. And so the fear of death will be eradicated, from humanity, in the not so distant future. I don't think, it won't take too long, but it's a fear that has strong and deep roots, that's for sure. But eventually, humanity will have no fear of death. In fact, we'll plan our whole life and we'll know exactly when we're going to die and how we're going to die, and it'll be fine, And so and we'll create a life around that, and so forth, And then eventually we'll conquer death the same way that all these masters have, not just Jesus, So hopefully this helps, and but I think more and more information will come out as these masters are out known for who they are. So hopefully that answers that question. All right, next question or comment. Keanu Reeves is Maitreya. Wow, I didn't know that. I've watched all the Matrix movies many times. I didn't realize I was watching Maitreya. I know you're kidding, Ron. But anyway, that's pretty funny. All right. See what I got to deal with? All the sarcasm. I'm just kidding. No. Any sights on Hermes Trismegistus? Excuse me for blowing that one up. I've been reading up on it, and I'll let you know. But anyway, what are your thoughts on it, Ron? Alrighty. What is the next question? This one comes from Die Orange Schnecky. Schnecky, I guess. Schneck. And this person's commenting on a video where I was talking about sharing. You mean tax and spend? Not at all. That's not all what I mean. The idea of tax and spend that the Republicans throw at the Democrats, it's just hogwash, man, because they both tax and spend. It's just, what do they spend their money on? I mean, you got, like just looking over the past few weeks, right? I mean, they just did this, they just printed up $3 trillion just out of the blue. Bam, right? It came out of nowhere, right? And then what do? The Republicans just throw it into the market, just to get that market back up, right? To keep their stocks up enough to, I guess, so they can bail out, or whatever. But they do it without any oversight, without any kind of restrictions or anything, just give them the money. And then when it comes for the Democrats to come forward and say, hey, you know what? What about the people? Maybe we could help the people out. Every single time, the Republicans just, it's like painful for them. I don't know. I don't know if we can afford that. I don't know if we can afford $300 billion. I mean, we just gave $2.5 trillion to our buddies, but $300 billion to the people to help them out during this crisis. Oh, no, I don't. Oh, that's going to cause hyperinflation. After, that's just printing money, but yet they do it all the time, Now, to take it a step further, since we're talking about the reappearance of the Christ and stuff, when I first started this channel, my intention was just to share my Maitreya experiences and get on with it, and then I get on with life and just let people listen to it as they listen to it or whatever. And it's kind of transformed in this whole thing. So this whole search for signs name is doesn't do it, I think, this channel justice, because we talk about a lot of different stuff, politics being one of them. And most religious folks, when they think about the return of the Christ, they think that Jesus is going to come back, of course, from the clouds with a host of angels at any moment that Jesus wants. And if you believe in what the church believed, then you got it. You're good. And if you don't, then of course you're, good luck. May the odds ever be in your favor, right? The enterprise, to use Benjamin Creme's master's words, of the reappearance of the Christ in the Masters of Wisdom is this huge, huge, huge ordeal. And it's been thousands of years, eons really, since the masters have been out openly teaching us. But since then, they've been working from behind the scenes to help set the stage for when Maitreya could come back and lead his tiny group back in to help teach us and bring us into the future that awaits us all, really. And now, one thing I haven't mentioned, and I wanted to swing back by and mention this, and I'm glad this person asked this question because it kind of touches on the political aspects of the reappearance of the Christ. But according to the Master DK, Master Djwal Khul, through Alice Bailey back in the 40s, that right after the end of World War II, Maitreya made the announcement that he would come back into the world, along with his masters, about 1,000 years earlier than originally had been anticipated or expected. But humanity had to take 3 steps to prove that we were ready. And a lot of it, I think, was done with FDR and some of the things that he did right after World War II, because he was a very, very advanced member of humanity, but in the political field. But one of the ones was there had to be a measure of peace that had to have been established. Now, of course, looking back, not all the nations suffered, and they didn't suffer equally, but there was a measure of peace that that humanity established. And it is probably a very tiny percentage of what the masters wanted, but it was enough, right? The other one was the principle of sharing had to have started to at least govern the minds of the world leaders. And then I think because of the Marshall Plan, and this is, it brings me to the whole tax and spend question, right? The masters, and then the third thing was the political groups had to start to clean house, which, I mean, the master's love for the people must be a lot greater than mine, because they saw that we were starting to clean houses politically, right? But according to Benjamin Creme's master, when the time comes for humanity to start looking at sharing seriously as the way toward, or, the way to peace, because we'll see that peace is a necessity, okay? There'll be a lot of plans that will be put forth. But the plan actually that's already in place that these masters have, that will be probably, one of the members of humanity will bring it forward, right? Now, I don't know if it would necessarily come from Maitreya, it might, but is that there will be a department in the United Nations that will be set up that will be headed by a master or a very, very advanced, uncorruptible member of humanity, okay? Which would be somebody probably at the level of Jesus was when he was in Palestine, or, maybe Abraham Lincoln or something like that. But anyway, but there will be a department that will be set up, and they will take an inventory of what countries have in excess and also what they need. And then they will start to, through the United Nations, send their excesses from one country to the next, and this, that, and the other. So I always use this as an example. The Philippines, right, has a lot of sugar, or they might need oil. So they'll send sugar to Iraq, and then Iraq would send them oil that they have in excess, and so forth. And that will build the trust that's needed. The masters never really talked about humanity itself giving aid to other countries and so forth. I mean, I'm sure that's going to be a part of it. I'm sure a lot of people who have a lot of excesses themselves will start to feel the need, because the fear of losing that wealth will start to kind of wane, and they'll, okay, I can, rather than having sitting on $100 million, I can get by with $20 million or $50 million or whatever, right? Instead of making $1.5 million a year, shoot, I'll just give away $1 million and I'll keep $500,000 a year or whatever. And it'll be left to us to do on our own. But that in and of itself wouldn't bring about peace on its own. The countries of the world have to do the sharing process in order for it to work. And so, but that's what the masters see as the best plan, whether that's the plan that is eventually put in place, hopefully, but we'll see. Humanity seems to get it wrong. All right, next one from Groovy Cat. Ben said, that's actually Ben's nickname was Ben Said, and I use that all the time too, so I'm guilty of it, that the Antichrist energy was deliberately released into the world through Nero 2,000 years ago. That's true. Then through Hitler, well, it wasn't necessarily Hitler, it was actually through the Axis powers, but during World War II. If that's the case, then he's insinuating that Hitler was a part of some divine mission, even while he also says that Hitler, of course, was evil and a lost soul at that. So every time Ben brings the Antichrist things, I find it makes no sense. The Antichrist is an energy, but it's not. Hitler wasn't the Antichrist. It was sent through the Axis powers, through Germany, the militarists in Japan, and the fascists in Italy, and that is what created the Antichrist energy. Really, that's what the three focal points for the energy to be released into the world. Of course, Hitler's crime, according to Benjamin Creme, was not so. He wasn't behind, let's say, the Holocaust per se. He was being used by the forces of darkness. There were actually masters, just like the masters of light, like Maitreya and Jesus and the master who was Madonna and so forth, the masters that we talk about in this channel. But there are masters on the other side, the masters of involution. Those masters overshadow their disciples the same way that the masters do, but they obsess them. They actually take them over and infringe on their free will. And so Hitler was apparently being used by two of those masters of darkness. And so his crime was he allowed them to do what they did. And so he won't be able to incarnate himself for the next 2,000 or 3,000 years, I think, until the next age, whenever it is. He gets to sit this one out. But he wasn't too unevolved. He was pretty advanced for a disciple, but he had some things that he needed to work on, some serious personal issues. I'm sorry to laugh, but anyway. And now, according to Benjamin Creme's master, that same energy, that nefarious energy, was not destroyed after the end of World War II. What allowed them to come back, and at a lesser rate, but still very powerful, was the establishment of the State of Israel, allowed that to happen. And that was actually, I know this is going to tick a lot of people off, but it was actually, who was behind the formation of the State of Israel was not some divine plan. It was actually the forces of darkness that were behind it. And they did it, and by doing it, had destabilized peace that could have been established decades ago. And so, and it's going to be a serious issue that Maitreya is going to have to work with both sides to help resolve. Humanity is going to have to resolve it, but he's going to be the one behind a lot of humanity helping to resolve that issue in the Middle East. But since then, according to Benjamin Creme's master, that same nefarious energy that worked through the Nazis and the fascists and the militarists in Japan found a new womb. And what it was is it was in Eastern Europe, and you could see the genocide that happened with Milosevic and stuff like that. The Zionists in Israel, and in the Pentagon. And so since then, the Pentagon has actually been running this country, and certain presidents have been more prone to the influence of that nefarious energy, and the Bush administration was very prone to it. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Trump administration was very prone to it as well, given what they did, or they're doing. But the Bush administration was under the illusion that God was directing them to do what they were doing, this war on terror, which is what I'm going to talk about in this next article from Benjamin Creme's master. But every president, Democrat, Republican, didn't matter, has been influenced at some level by this nefarious energy. And it's something that the masters themselves have had to deal with themselves and contain it and so forth to help keep them from getting too powerful. But anyway, alrighty, so let's get on to the real meaty part of this video, which is Benjamin Creme's master's article. And this is the master's pledge, and it's from Master Speaks, Volume 2, page 13. It was actually the first one that was in this book. As the dark clouds of war gather and obscure the sunlit sky of peace, the response of humanity is twofold: mute acceptance and compliance with the will of the warmongers, or active and spirited resistance to their plans and ploys. Today we see both reactions in equal measure. Half the world is caught up in the glamour of, quote, a war against terrorism, unquote, without recognizing the underlying cause and in terrorism itself. The other half deplores both terrorism and the lack of understanding of its genesis. They know that changes on a major scale alone hold the key to ending this atrocious evil, and call to the leaders of the nations to recognize and address the inadequacies which so unfairly divide the world. This latter group must grow and increase their resistance to the plans of those now in power who so threaten the stability of the world. They must find each other and work together, knowing that they work and speak for the vast but silent majority who share their longing for peace and manifested justice. Peace will only come when justice reigns, when sharing has opened men's hearts and awakened them to trust. Thus men must work and speak loudly for justice and sharing, which alone will bring an end to men's suffering, to terrorism and war. We, your elder brothers, are ready to do our part. We will potentize all actions taken on behalf of the common good. We await the opportunity to manifest our strength, to help to right the wrongs of the past, to show men the uselessness of war. We pledge our support of all who call for an end to war, for the restoration of sanity and balance in the affairs of men, for the creation of justice and freedom for all. Help us to help you. Help us to do our part. We long to act, as always, in the interest of the common good, which, in our understanding, is the best interest for all men. Thus it is that we advocate sharing. Thus do we advise justice. Thus do we see freedom and peace as the culmination of sharing and justice. Let us work together for the rescue of this world. Let us abandon differences in the interest of the race. Let sanity triumph and bring men to see their mutual need for peace and the restoration of an ailing world. Many await the future in dread, fearful that man has lost his way, that it is now too late to find the path to peace. We counsel otherwise. We know that the path to peace is simply found, needed only the creation of justice and trust. We know that sharing alone will engender that trust and bring men to abandon both terrorism and war. Thus will it be, and thus will men respond to Maitreya's message of brotherhood and justice, free at last from the glamours of fear and mistrust, ready to create the future in deed and in joy. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.